Their photos were banned, burned. One was investigated by the FBI. Another one even triggered a United States Senate hearing. But what did these pinup icons actually do to spark that much backlash? What were they accused of? And why were governments so desperate to shut them down? This video unpacks the most controversial women in pinup history and how they rewrote the rules forever. Starting with the quiet Southern girl in the 1950s, who changed everything the moment she stepped in front of a camera. Paige. Paige rose to fame in the pinup world almost by accident. Born in Nashville, Tennessee, she grew up in a strict Southern household and described herself as shy and obedient. Hardly the background most would expect for someone who would become a symbol of sexual freedom. After moving to New York City in the late 1940s, Betty's distinct look, jet black hair, signature bangs, and a magnetic smile caught the eye of amateur photographers while she strolled along Coney Island. That encounter marked the start of a modeling career that would soon make her a household name. By the early 1950s, Paige's image was everywhere. Her photos mixed playfulness and boldness, setting her apart from other pinup models. But it was her work with photographer Irving Klaw and his sister Paula that pushed boundaries. Klaw introduced Betty to fetish-themed photography, images that included whips, ropes, and blindfolds. In some early shoots, she posed under the pseudonym Mona Monroe, or simply as a calendar girl. These photos, featuring S&M themes, were almost unheard of in mainstream America at the time. Betty's willingness to pose in these scenarios, always with a sense of confidence and control, challenged the era's rigid ideas about women and sexuality. The controversy surrounding Betty's work soon caught the attention of authorities. In 1955, Senator Estes Kefauver, a prominent figure known for his moral crusades, launched a Senate committee investigation into pornography. Betty's bondage-themed photos became a central focus. She was summoned to Capitol Hill, where Kefauver questioned her directly about the images. When asked about the bondage photos, Betty famously replied, "Why, Senator honey, I think they're cute." Her response, delivered with charm and wit, became a defining moment in the clash between personal expression and public morality. The Senate hearings had real consequences. The pressure from the investigation drove Betty out of modeling and ended the careers of many photographers she worked with. She later said she was hounded by federal agents who waved her nude photos in her face. By the age of 34, Betty decided her days as the girl with the perfect figure were over. She disappeared from public life in the late 1950s, retreating to the South and choosing a quiet, private existence. Even after her retirement, Paige's influence only grew. Her photos resurfaced on album covers, in art books, and as inspiration for countless artists. Commercial projects like the 2006 film The Notorious Betty Paige introduced her story to new generations. Betty's legacy rests on her refusal to apologize for her work and her ability to turn scandal into strength. She redefined femininity and showed that women could claim ownership of their image. Another icon would soon face her own moment of scandal, one that threatened to end her career before it truly began: Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe's path to stardom was shaped by a decision she made in 1949, long before she became a household name. At that time, she was still Norma Jean Mortensen, an aspiring actress in Los Angeles who was struggling to pay her bills. Facing a car payment she couldn't afford, she agreed to pose nude for photographer Tom Kelly in exchange for $50. The session produced a series of images that would later be published as part of the Golden Dreams pinup calendar. Marilyn had no idea these photos would resurface just as her career was beginning to take off. As Marilyn started landing small roles and gaining attention in Hollywood, her image became increasingly important to the studio executives at 20th Century Fox. They were building her up as a glamorous star, and any hint of a scandal threatened that image. When the nude photos re-emerged a few years later, the studio was alarmed. Executives feared the public would not accept a rising star with such a past. Rather than try to hide the truth or deny her involvement, Marilyn and Fox made a calculated decision. They chose to admit the photos were hers, hoping that honesty would win the public's sympathy. Marilyn spoke openly about her situation in interviews, explaining that she took the job out of financial necessity. She didn't make excuses, and her straightforwardness was unusual for the time. In 1952, when the story broke, the public's reaction was not the outrage the studio had feared. Instead, many people admired her candor. Life magazine even called her the talk of Hollywood, reflecting the fascination and support she received. Marilyn's willingness to own her choices made her seem more relatable and authentic to her growing fan base. The controversy didn't end there. In December 1953, publisher Hugh Hefner launched the very first issue of Playboy magazine. He featured Marilyn on the cover using a photo from the 1952 Miss America pageant parade. For the centerfold, he used one of the 1949 nude photos from her shoot with Tom Kelly. Marilyn never posed specifically for Playboy and had no involvement with the magazine's production. Still, the issue became a sensation. The post office tried to block its distribution, but Hefner persisted, and the magazine sold out quickly. The public's interest only grew, and Marilyn's image as a sex symbol was cemented. This episode became a turning point for Marilyn Monroe. Instead of letting scandal define her, she took control of her story and used the attention to her advantage. Her openness and refusal to be shamed by her past helped her connect with audiences in a way that few stars had before. Marilyn's ability to navigate controversy became a hallmark of her career, setting her apart from her peers and establishing her as an enduring icon. While Marilyn's approach to fame was groundbreaking, she wasn't the only star who understood how to use attention to her benefit. Hollywood in the 1950s was filled with personalities who knew how to command the spotlight in their own unique ways. Jane Mansfield. Jane Mansfield stood out in Hollywood for her ability to turn every appearance into an event. With platinum blonde hair, an hourglass figure, and a wide, practiced smile, she fit the studio mold but brought her own approach to fame. Early on, she made headlines as Playboy's Playmate of the Month in February 1955, a move that helped shape her reputation as both glamorous and daring. Jane was known for her revealing gowns, her willingness to pose for risque photos, and her habit of staging publicity stunts that kept her in the news. By the mid-1950s, 20th Century Fox promoted her as their blonde bombshell successor to Marilyn Monroe, but Jane took that image further. She turned controversy into strategy, building a persona that thrived on attention and pushed boundaries others avoided. In April 1957, Jane attended a dinner at Romanoff's in Beverly Hills, hosted by Paramount Pictures for Sophia Loren, who was being welcomed to Hollywood. Jane arrived in a dress with a plunging neckline, drawing every eye in the room. When she sat next to Loren, a photographer captured a photo that quickly became famous. In the image, Sophia Loren glances sideways at Jane's exposed cleavage, her expression a mix of surprise and unease. The photo was published in newspapers and magazines worldwide, sparking both fascination and debate. Some Italian publications retouched the image to cover Jane's dress, while others refused to print it at all. Only Il Giornale d'Italia ran the uncensored version, highlighting the controversy that followed Jane wherever she went. Years later, Sophia Loren explained her reaction in an interview, saying, "I'm staring at her nipples because I'm afraid they are about to come onto my plate." The moment became part of Hollywood legend, and Jane's willingness to stand out in public set her apart from her peers. The incident at Romanoff's wasn't just a publicity stunt, it became a symbol of Jane's approach to fame. She didn't shy away from attention, even if it meant breaking with social norms. Jane's boldest move came in 1963 when she starred in Promises, Promises, the first Hollywood feature of the sound era to feature nudity by a mainstream star. In the film, Jane appears undressed in 3 different scenes, including a bathtub sequence where she sings "I'm in Love" surrounded by foam. She's also shown drying herself with a towel and lying on a bed, with the camera capturing moments no other actress at the time would have risked. The film's release led to immediate controversy. Chicago and several other major cities banned it, and critics debated whether Jane's performance was artistic or simply provocative. To promote Promises, Promises, Jane appeared nude in the June 1963 issue of Playboy. The issue drew so much attention that Hugh Hefner, Playboy's founder, was charged with obscenity over the photos, though he was acquitted after a hung jury. Copies of the magazine sold for up to $10 each, a high price that reflected the public's fascination with Jane and the film. The controversy didn't damage her reputation. Instead, it reinforced her image as Hollywood's provocateur. Jane understood how to turn risk into reward, using every scandal to keep herself in the headlines. Jane Mansfield's life was cut short in 1967, but her impact on Hollywood's approach to fame and publicity remains. She didn't just rely on looks, she mastered the art of staying relevant by embracing controversy and challenging expectations. Her willingness to push limits paved the way for other stars who wanted to do things differently. Some, like Mamie Van Doren, found their own path by refusing to follow the rules and redefining what it meant to be a pinup icon. Mamie Van Doren. Mamie Van Doren's story is rooted in a background that stood in sharp contrast to her later image. Born Joan Lucille Olander in South Dakota in 1931, she spent her early years on a farm in Minnesota, where her family lived without electricity or running water. When they moved to California, Mamie set her sights on something bigger. At 18, she won the Miss Palm Springs title, which brought her to the attention of Howard Hughes. Hughes helped her get a start in Hollywood, arranging a contract with RKO Pictures and introducing her to the industry's inner circle. Mamie's career soon took a new turn when she signed with Universal in August 1955, and she quickly became known for her striking looks and strong-willed personality. Unlike many actresses who tried to fit the mold set by studios, Mamie built her own brand by taking on roles that highlighted her rebellious image. Her first major role came in The All-American opposite Tony Curtis, but it was her performances in films like Untamed Youth, 1957, and High School Confidential, 1958, that made her a true standout. These movies captured the energy of rock and roll culture and featured Mamie as a confident, provocative character who didn't shy away from controversy. The Catholic Legion of Decency condemned Untamed Youth for its risque themes, but the backlash only increased the film's popularity and cemented Mamie's place as a symbol of the era's shifting attitudes about sexuality and independence. Mamie's approach to fame was direct and unapologetic. She openly discussed her views on sexual freedom and encouraged women to embrace their desires. Her willingness to talk about her own experiences was unusual for the time and made her both a star and a target for criticism. In her autobiography, Playing the Field: Sex, Stardom, Love, and Life in Hollywood, she offered a candid look at the realities of life in the film industry, reflecting on her relationships and the challenges she faced. The book showed that Mamie was determined to control her own narrative, refusing to let others define her story. Beyond acting, Mamie found ways to stay relevant as public tastes changed. She performed in nightclubs, created her own lines of lingerie and perfume, and managed her image with a careful business sense. Even as other blonde bombshells faded into the spotlight, Mamie adapted, using new platforms and opportunities to connect with fans. Her career spanned decades, and she often reflected on her journey with a sense of pride and resilience. She once said, "I came to Hollywood determined to follow in Jean Harlow's footsteps, but I was determined not to die young. My hope was to endure, and endure I have." Mamie Van Doren's legacy is one of persistence and self-determination. She challenged expectations at every turn and showed that there was more than one way to succeed in Hollywood. Her story set the stage for others who would also use controversy and bold choices to shape their careers. In the world of entertainment, some performers found new ways to push boundaries and turn daring decisions into lasting influence. Tempest Storm. Tempest Storm's career began with a single decision that set her apart from the start. Born Annie Blanche Banks in 1928, she left her Georgia home at just 15 years old, determined to make her way in entertainment. By 1951, she was performing at the Follies Theatre, where she chose the name Tempest Storm, a name that matched her bold stage presence. Her natural charisma and confidence quickly drew attention, and she soon became a standout in the world of burlesque. Within a few years, Tempest Storm's fame soared. In 1956, she signed a 10-year contract with the Brian Engels Burlesque Company, earning $100,000 each year, a remarkable sum for any performer at the time. This contract made her the highest-paid burlesque performer in the industry. She also made headlines by insuring her breasts for $1 million through Lloyd's of London. This move was more than a publicity stunt. It showed her understanding of her own value and how to control her public image. Tempest used her business sense to shape her career on her own terms, at a time when few women in entertainment had that kind of power. Tempest's influence extended beyond the stage. She appeared in a number of exploitation films, including Teaserama, 1955, Paris After Midnight, 1951, and Striptease Girl, 1952. Her appearance in Teaserama alongside Betty Paige became especially well known, helping to bring burlesque and its stars into the wider cultural conversation. Through these films, Tempest Storm played a role in shifting the perception of burlesque from something hidden in smoky clubs to a recognized part of American entertainment. Her personal life often drew as much attention as her performances. In 1956, while performing at the Dunes Hotel, she began a relationship with Elvis Presley. She later described Elvis as absolutely fantastic, recalling his politeness and charm. The following year, in 1957, she became involved with John F. Kennedy, who was then a senator. These relationships became part of her public story, adding to her mystique and blurring the lines between her stage persona and her real life. Tempest understood that her off-stage life could be as compelling as her performances, and she didn't shy away from letting the public see both sides. Tempest Storm's career lasted far longer than most of her peers. She continued to perform for decades, adapting her act and staying connected to new audiences. Her final performance took place in June 2010 at a burlesque Hall of Fame reunion show, after which a fractured hip ended her time on stage. Even after retiring, she remained active in the burlesque community and was the subject of the 2016 documentary Tempest Storm, Burlesque Queen. The film gave viewers a look into her life beyond the spotlight, including her relationship with her daughter and her reflections on a long, groundbreaking career. Tempest Storm's story stands out for how she combined business sense, performance, and personal intrigue. She challenged expectations and made choices that helped move burlesque into the mainstream. Her willingness to embrace controversy and use it to her advantage paved the way for others in the industry. As burlesque continued to evolve, another performer emerged who would take the spotlight in her own way, drawing even more attention with her unapologetic approach to both scandal and fame. Bla1 Star. Bla1 Star became known for her bold presence in the world of burlesque during the 1950s. She performed at the 2 O'Clock Club in Baltimore, where her name became a fixture and her routines drew crowds from across the country. With striking red hair and a confident approach on stage, Bla1 stood out among her peers for both her humor and her willingness to push boundaries. Audiences remembered her not just for her performances, but for her unapologetic attitude and the way she carried herself in a field often dismissed as scandalous. Her fame, however, reached a new level in 1959 when her relationship with Earl Long, then governor of Louisiana, became public knowledge. Earl Long was married at the time, and the affair quickly became headline news. The press reported on their relationship in detail, noting not only the governor's open displays of affection, but also rumors that state resources were used to support Bla1. The scandal was one of the most talked about stories of the decade, with newspapers across the country covering every development. Earl Long did not try to hide his connection to Bla1, and his willingness to be seen with her in public only fueled the media's interest. Public reaction to the affair was divided. Some people saw the relationship as a sign of poor judgment on the governor's part, criticizing both his personal and political decisions. Others were captivated by the story, drawn to Bla1's refusal to hide or apologize for her involvement. Instead of letting the controversy damage her reputation, Bla1 used it to her advantage. She continued to perform and leaned into the attention, understanding that notoriety could help her career rather than destroy it. This approach made her a household name and a symbol of defiance against the expectations placed on women in the spotlight. Bla1 Star's ability to navigate public scandal set her apart. She did not let negative press or judgment from others define her. Instead, she embraced the situation, building her brand around her willingness to stand out and challenge the status quo. In a time when many entertainers would have retreated from such attention, Bla1 chose to remain visible and active, showing that controversy could be turned into opportunity. Her story became an example of how a performer could use public interest, even when fueled by scandal, to achieve lasting recognition. Later in her life, Bla1 transitioned from performing to running a jewelry business, applying her sense of style and creativity to a new field. She also wrote a memoir, sharing her experiences and reflections on her career and her relationship with Earl Long. Through her writing and her work outside of burlesque, she continued to shape her own story, demonstrating resilience and adaptability. Bla1 Star's life shows how public attention, even when rooted in controversy, can be used as a tool for personal and professional growth. Her choices challenged the norms of her era and left a mark on the way entertainers think about fame and reputation. These stories of resilience and reinvention invite us to look at the impact of bold choices on the evolution of celebrity culture. From Betty Paige's Senate hearing to Marilyn Monroe's centerfold controversy, each of these women found ways to turn outrage into opportunity. Their stories show how public scandal, instead of ending a career, could create new paths to success. If you liked this video, make sure to watch other videos of our channel about beautiful ladies of yesteryear.